We continue now at the top of Daf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph in Meseches Moed Kattan. This is Moed Kattan Daf 11a. The Gemara here is bringing a brayso in regards to avodah zarah. It says that a person is allowed to go liyirid shel akum. A person is allowed to go to the marketplace of the idol worshippers. Rashi over here says Yom Deshuk. It was the day that the marketplace was open. It was usually the same day that they were having a special worship of their avodah zarah. And so on that day you can go there. Velochim behema avodim ushvachos. You can buy from them animals, servants, maidservants, bottom houses, sados, ukramim, fields and vineyards. V'chosev, you can write it up. Umala bercho shalahen, and you can bring it up in their courts, make it official. Why? Mimneishu kamatzil miyad, and it's a similar idea that we said on the previous Amud, because it's really like the only opportunity you have to do it. You're, so to speak, saving those items from them. You're taking them at that point in time. You won't be able to do it later. Rashi over here says, Umala berchos lekaiman b'chasimasan. You're allowed to, again, be Mekayim it with the signatures. Since now is the time when you can get it and not at a different time, so surely that makes it permitted. Again, that was a similar permission that was given in the previous Talmud in regards to collecting debts on Chol HaMoed. The Gemara continues, Rav Shara l'chia barashi l'migdal uhare b'chol demoada. Rav allowed Chia Barashi to fashion traps on Chol HaMoed. Rashi over here says, Ohari, shetzadin bodagim, this was a kind of trap they used to capture fish. So he allowed him to construct that on Chol HaMoed. My time, what's the reason? Ma'aseh Hedyahu, the reason is because it was not something that was made by a professional, by a craftsman. This is a kind of trap that everybody can make, so it's allowed on Chol HaMoed. Avol Izle, but if you have Izle, Rashi says Izle is rishtos, shetzadin bo ofos. Those are nets that you use to capture birds. More complicated to make, also that's forbidden to make on Chol HaMoed. My time, what's the reason? Ma'aseh Umanhu, that was the work of a professional. And the Gemara continues, Rav Yehuda Shara la'ami tanura. Rav Yehuda allowed Ami, who was an oven maker, he allowed him lemigdal tanure, he allowed him to make ovens on Chol HaMoed, to build ovens on Chol HaMoed. Well, the Rava bar Asbe lemigdal muhulasa, he allowed Rava bar Asbe to construct muhulasa, Rashi says is like a sieve, he allowed him to make that on Chol HaMoed. Gemara says, Ini, is that really the case? Are you allowed to make these things? V'atani Rabba bar Shmuel, but Rabba bar Shmuel taught, it says V'shavin, that everybody agrees she'ein godlin tanur lechatchila, you're not allowed to make an oven lechatchila on Chol HaMoed. So the Gemara answers, Lokash is not difficult, kan be amos hachama, kan be amos hagashamim. In the summer months, you're allowed to make an oven on Chol HaMoed, but in the winter season, in the rainy months, that's not allowed. Rashi over here explains, Lemigdal tanur means lasos hatanur mechodash, to fashion the oven, make it brand new. Mehulasa nafa, that's a sieve. So again, this is allowing him to make an oven from scratch and allowing the person to make a sieve. Bimos hachama, so the Gemara said when it comes to an oven, it depends if it's in the summer season. Kilomar kashiyesh bimos hachama could go in bepesach. For example, Chol HaMoed Pesach, when it's the summer season, the land is dry, there's no rain. Mutter lasos botaner, you can make an oven then. Lefisha la'alter yavish, and the reason why it's allowed is because it's dry outside, it's immediately going to be dry. The oven, v'yacholin lefos bo, pas beregel, he'll be able to use it immediately to bake bread on the regel, etzorech haregel, for the regel. In other words, since it can be used for the purpose of the yontiv, therefore to make it on Chol HaMoed in the summer season, Chol HaMoed Pesach is okay. Kan be mos hagashamim, kilomar kashayordan hagashamim beregel. Now, if you're talking about in Sukkot, which is the rainy season, could go in Besukkot, let's say Chol HaMoed Sukkot, enos and tanor, then you can't make an oven, lefisha eno yavish la'alter, because it's not going to dry immediately, meaning the oven's not going to dry, ad la'achar a regel, until after the holiday. V'yavatircha shelo l'tzorech haregel, so now it came out that you did work, not really l'tzorech haregel. The Gemara continues with the Mishnah, osen maikel legag ulamar pesas, you're allowed to make a fence for a roof or for a balcony, ma'aseh hedyot, as long as it's made not in a professional manner, avolo ma'aseh uman, you can't make it professionally. Shavin es hasdakin, you're allowed to seal up the cracks. This is talking about the cracks of the ovens. Umagila no son b'magila, you can roll over them with a roller. Biyad uveregel, with your hand and with your foot. Avalo b'machlatzayim, but you're not allowed to use a presser. Again, that is a kli that is made for that purpose. And Rashi over here explains, Shavin es hasdakin shabetanor, again, you're allowed to seal up the cracks in the oven. Umagila no son b'magila, you roll it with the roller. Shagolalin al karkos hatanor eitz gadol, you roll on the floor of the oven a large piece of wood, ogol, it's round. Kidei listom hastakin, and that's what you use to close up the cracks. Biyad uveregel, you can use your hand or your foot. Shalokach biyado eitz, he takes some wood in his hand. Uvoatin biyad ala tanor, he beats against the tanor with his hand. Listom hastakin, to seal up the cracks. Oboy beraglo al karkos hatanor, he uses his foot and he kicks against it. But you're not allowed to use machlatzayim, you can't use this presser. Eitz ke'ein regel, it's like a piece of wood like a foot. Shadoch go b'mazivo listom hastakin, you use it, you press it in order to seal up the cracks. V'yeshbo ma'isa uman yoser mimagila. Using that's more of the way the professionals do it, more than if you're just using a roller. And the Mishnah continues, Hatzir, the hinge of a door, V'hatzinor, that's the cylinder, that's part of the hinge of the door, V'hakora, and the crossbeam of the door, V'haminol, and the lock, V'hamaftech, and the key, Shenishbru. Any of these things break, Misaknon b'moed. You're allowed to fix them on Chol HaMoed, Uvilvad shelo yiskavin lasos malachta b'moed. As long as you're not purposely intending to do this work on Chol HaMoed. Rashi over here says, Uvilvad shelo yiskavin lasos malachta b'moed, kashiyesh lo lasakin kol elu b'shar yemos hashana umeinicho an HaMoed. Let's say you could have fixed it beforehand, and during other times in the year, but then you delayed it purposely until Chol HaMoed, that would already be a problem. And the Mishnah concludes, V'chol kevoshin shu yachol echol mehen b'moed kovshan. If you have any items that you're pickling, any foods that are pickled, if you're able to eat from them, partake from them on Chol HaMoed, then you're allowed to pickle them on Chol HaMoed as well. Rashi over here says, Ukvoshin shel tzir kilomar dogim. Let's say you have fish, and you're going to put them in brine. Ushar devarim shekovshim emelech. Other things that you put into salt, into salt water. Sheyachol la'ochlan b'moed. If you're able to eat them on Chol HaMoed. Shelo yetzarech lahamtin b'chilosan ad lachar HaMoed. In other words, it's a food item that you can pickle it, and you don't have to delay until after the Moed to eat it. Sheyehu nichbosh and meyer. They're things that become pickled quickly. Uru'uyin lechol miyad. They can be eaten right away. So again, you're allowed to pickle those items on Chol HaMoed. And the Gemara says, Hechi dami ma'isa hedyot. What does it mean ma'isa hedyot? Again, it said in the Mishnah that you can make a fence for the roof or for the balcony if it's not done in a professional manner. What would be an example of that? Rav Yosef Amar, Rav Yosef says, Behutza v'dafna means you're using, let's say, palm branches, using other kinds of branches. That would be considered not professional. The Masnisatan in the Brisa was taught, Sar b'tzror ve'no tach b'tit. You can put up a wall made of pebbles or stones, but you're not going to use any clay to plaster it together. And Rashi over here says, Hutza, again, Hutzei dekel, that refers to the branches of a palm tree. And Dofna avdi l'chayayim shall gather. Dofna refers to the fact, the way Rashi understands, you're making these poles, kind of like the poles of a fence. Ve'no tach b'tit, but again, you're not going to put clay to stick it together. Zehu ma'isa hedyot. That would all be considered ma'isa hedyot. And the Gemara continues, Shafin es hastakin, you can smooth out the cracks in an oven. Umagila nosan v'magila, you can roll over it with a roller. And the Gemara says, Hashta b'magila amrit shari. If you just said it's okay with a roller, so biyad over regel miboy, does the Mishnah need to say that you can do it with your hand and your foot? That's even less than a roller. So the Gemara says, Hachi kamar, this is what it means to say. Shafin es hastakin, you're allowed to smooth out the cracks. Umagila no son ke'ein magila, and then you can also roll over them in a way similar to what a roller does. Biyad over regel, meaning with the hand and the foot. Avolo b'mecholtzayim, again, you're not allowed to use a presser. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Hatzir v'hatzinor v'hakor v'haminol v'hamaftech shenishbru mesakron v'moed. You have the hinge, or the cylinder, or the crossbeam, or the lock, or the key. If they break, you're allowed to fix them on Chol HaMoed. Gemara says, Uramini, we have the following contradiction. It says, Ad Yomav, until his days, Hayapatish Makab Yerushalayim v'chulu. It says you would hear the hammer banging in Yerushalayim. Rashi over here explains, Ad Yomav Shal Yochanan Kohen Gadol, means until the days of Yochanan Kohen Gadol, Hayapatish Makab Yerushalayim v'cholo Shal Moed. The hammer would be banging in Yerushalayim on Chol HaMoed. They would be doing work. V'hu Gazar Olavu Bitlo. And it means to say that he made a decree and he said that's not going to be allowed anymore. Al Masr, so you see, apparently you're not allowed to use hammers on Chol HaMoed. Yet our Mishnah says you're allowed to fix a lock and a key. Apparently, you're using instruments similar to a hammer. You're using tools, and you're doing this on Chol HaMoed. So it seems to be a contradiction. As the Gemara explains, Ad Yomav in Mikan Va'ilach Lo. It was only until the days of Yochanan Kohen Gadol, but beyond that, it was not allowed. And the Gemara answers, Lo Kash, it's not difficult. Kan b'denafchi. In one case, we're talking about the hammer of the blacksmith, and kan b'denagri. In one case, we're talking about the hammer of the carpenter. Rashi over here says, "B'denafchi de patish hainu kornis." The hammer of the nafchi of the blacksmith was called a kornis. Usher, that's already usher to have a kolarah, but that makes a lot of noise. You're banging those hammers against the anvils. V'olode kola usher, to make such a noise like that, that's going to be a problem. But if you're talking about the banging of the carpenter, it's not as loud, so that's going to be allowed on Chol HaMoed. So the Gemara says, "Maskif Rav Chisda." Rav Chisda asked on this answer, "Yomru kolarah usher kol zutra shari." Does it make sense? People are going to say a loud noise is usher, a smaller noise is permitted. Doesn't make any sense. And so Elomar Rav Chisda, rather Rav Chisda says as follows, Lo kasha, it's not difficult. Habe magle, habe chatzine. And Rashi over here explains, magle masar hagadol shari. It's talking about the sickle. That's going to be permitted. The lo molid kol klum. The point is that doesn't make any noise at all. So that's allowed. Bechatzine. But if you're talking about chatzine, and Rashi says brora refers to chiseling, so usher, that's going to be a problem. That's forbidden to have a oloda kol atzvei. That's already making noise. so it's going to be a problem. If it's a difference between something that makes no noise and something that makes noise, that difference we can understand. We cannot understand making a distinction between a smaller noise and a louder noise. That doesn't make sense. The Gemara continues, Rav Papa Amar, Rav Papa says, Kan kodem gezerah, kan la'achar gezerah. Very simple answer. In one case, meaning our Mishnah is talking before the decree. Before the decree, it was okay to use the tools. After the decree, meaning after the time of Yochanan Kohen Gadol, then it became a problem. And the Gemara continues, Rav Ashi Amar, Rav Ashi says, Ha Rabbi Yehuda, Ha Rabbi Yossi. Actually, it is a contradiction. And our Mishnah, in one case, we're talking about Rabbi Yehuda, and in one case, we're talking about Rabbi Yossi. The Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdimi, because Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdimi said, Man tana shinoi b'moed b'davar ha'avid. Who's the one that says that when it comes to a loss of money, you also have to do something with the shinoi? You can't do it in the normal fashion. The lo ke Rabbi Yossi. That's not like Rabbi Yossi, meaning Rabbi Yossi allows it, and you don't have to do it with a shinoi. You can do it in the normal way. That's the explanation of our Mishnah. Our Mishnah follows Rabbi Yossi and says it's completely permitted. But when it said again that it was a problem after the times of Yochanan Kohen Gadol, that was following the other Tana, was following Rabbi Yehuda, who requires a shinoi as well. And the Gemara says, Amar Ravina says, Keman modlinon ha'idna kavyusa dedosha b'chola demadu. Who are we following nowadays will raise up the lintel above the door in order to drive in the screws? Whose opinion does that follow? Keman, who does that follow? Rabbi Yossi follows Rabbi Yossi again, that you're allowed to do the work without a shinoi. The Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Kivoshin shu yachol lechol b'moed kofshan. It said in the Mishnah, if you have food that you're salting or preserving on chol hamoed, as long as it will be ready to eat on the holiday, so then it's permitted to do that on chol hamoed. So the Gemara says, Bedisa liboy, Bedisa is the name of the river, liboy is the name of the location. So there was this particular river, Bedisa, in this particular location. Kavari, so what happened was it overflowed, it deposited a bunch of fish along the banks of the river. Azal kuliyal matzot, so everyone came, and they trapped from these fish. Aisu kavar, and they brought these fish. So Sharalu Rava lemimlach minayu. Rava permitted that they were allowed to salt them. They had so many fish, they weren't able to eat them all immediately. They needed to preserve them. So he said, you can salt them, you can preserve these fish. So Amar le Abaye, so Abaye said to Rava, Vatanan kevashin shu yachol lechol mehen b'moed kovshan. It only said you're allowed to preserve foods that you're able to eat on the holiday. Here, they're preserving this with so much salt for a later time. They're not going to be able to eat this on the holiday. So Amar le, so he said to him, Kevan de meikara daita da'achila isinu. Since originally they got these fish thinking they would eat them immediately, and then they had so many fish they needed to preserve. It was after the fact. Vishavik lu pasti. Now at this point in time, if they don't preserve them, it's going to be a loss of money. So kiprakmati avidami, it's like a business venture that represents a loss of money. Visharin, it's going to be permitted to do that in Chol HaMoed. That's why it's permitted. The Gemara continues, Vika diamri. Some have a different version of the story as follows: Sharilu Rava meitzad meizal aisuya yumimlach. Rav allowed them to trap it and to bring it and to salt it. Amar le Abaye, Abaye said to him, V'anon kivoshin shu yochel lechol mehen kovshan. Abaye asked the same question again, why are you allowed to preserve it? Don't you have to be able to eat it on the holiday? Tanan, that's what it said in the Mishnah, you have to be able to eat it on the holiday. So Amar le, so Rav said back to him, Hani nami misachli. These also can be eaten in theory on the holiday. Agav itzitza, because what you could do is, you could press down on them, you could basically extract the salt, and you can make them edible. Therefore, this is permitted. The Gemara continues, Kihad Shmuel, it's like what we find by Shmuel, Avdule Shisin Itzitze V'achol. They pressed down 60 times, and then he was able to eat. Rashi over here says, Shisin Itzitze, Kiloma Rochtzen Osoharve, meaning they rinsed it off many times. Pa'amim many times, Matzile Shishim Zim, they did it at 60 times, meaning there is a way to extract the salt and make the item edible. And the Gemara continues, Rava ikla levei Reish Galusa. Rava went to the house of the Reish Galusa, the head of the exile. Avdi le shisin itzitze, again, similar thing. They did these 60 rinses or pressing down, va'achal, and that allowed him to be able to eat. Rav ikla levei Rav Shafir. Rav went to the house of Rav Shafir. Aisu lekamayu ahu kavara. So they brought him a certain fish. Tilsa bishula, a third cooked. Tilsa milcha, a third salted. Betilsa tevia, and a third roasted. And Rashi over here explains, Tilsa milcha, what do you mean a third salted? Agavitzitza, again, they use this method of pressing down, of extracting, and that's how they were able to eat it. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav says, Amar li'ad atzayda, Ada the fisherman said to me, Kivara, when it comes to fish, Samuch lemisrchei mali, when it's close to the time that it's going to spoil, that's when it's the best quality. V'Amar Rav, and Rav says, Amar li'ad atzayda, Ada the fisherman said to me, Kivara, when it comes to fish, Tavya bachua, you should roast it in its brother. Asuke bavua, then you should put it in its father. Meichle bivrei, you should eat it in its son. And ishtio le'avu, you should drink with it its father. The explanation of this is you should roast it with its brother. The brother of fish is salt, meaning you should roast it or you should broil it together with salt. Both fish and salt come from the water, so they're brothers. Asuke be'avu means you should put it in its father, means you should put it after you broil it, you should put it in its father, meaning put it in water. You should eat it bivrei, eat it with its son. That's a reference to fish brine. You should eat it together with the brine which comes out of the fish. And ishti olavu means you should drink it with its father, means drink it together with water. V'yamar Rav, and Rav says, Amar li'ad etzayda, out of the fisherman said to me, Kivara tachli v'chelba. When it comes to fish, when it comes to cress, and when it comes to milk, liton gufa v'lo liton purya. You should carry it with the body and don't carry it with the bed. As Rashi explains over, it means after you eat these items, you should walk a lot before you go to sleep. Don't go to sleep immediately after eating these items. It's not healthy. V'yamar Rav, and Rav says, Amar li'ad etzayda, Ada the fisherman said to me, Kavara tachli v'chelba, when it comes to fish, cress, and milk, maya v'lo shichra, better to drink together with it water and not beer, and shichra v'lo chamra, better to have beer. If you don't have water, better to have beer rather than wine. Hadron aloch mashkin beis hashalchin. This is the end of the first parak of Meseches Moed Kattan. If you're enjoying these videos and this channel, please like, share, and subscribe. You can take a look at the description box below to see how you can support this channel. We will continue with the second parak of Moed Kattan in the next video.